And when you're ready.
This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Individual Advancement Program Fiscal Year 2021 Grant Review Panel. I am Ruth Ann Calling, Commissioner from Jeffersonville. This is April the 14th, and we are meeting by conference call and streaming live from a webinar. We welcome applicants and other guests who may be listening in today, and we would like to remind you that you are muted for this review. There is no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. At this time, we would like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, where they are from in the state. I'll call out your name. Andrew.
Andrew Finley, art history educator, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Esteban.
Yes, I'm Esteban Garcia, also an artist and educator located at Purdue University, West Lafayette.
Nazreen.
Hi, I'm Nasreen Khan. I'm an artist and educator here in Indianapolis.
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Leidner. I'm an artist and a teaching artist based in New Albany and Louisville.
Monica. Are you there, Monica?
Sorry, I'm clicking unmute and it's not unmuting her. You're muted at the moment, Monica.
We hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so my name is Monica Prekopa, and I'm an attorney working in Indianapolis, living in Carmel.
Thank you. Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie Phillips. I'm an associate professor of art history at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana.
Anna.
Hi, Anna Tragister, IAC staff.
And Chapin.
Chapin Schnick, IAC staff, former art educator.
Okay, thank you. I think I've covered everyone. If not, speak up.
Nope, you've got
Thank you. Now we'll begin the panel review. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present anything new, additional, or any opposing comments. We are not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives that panelists bring to the table. After the second reader has finished, I will open the discussion for final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, that panelist will be placed on hold while the application is reviewed. However, there are no conflicts of interest on this particular panel. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion. These scores save automatically. Are there any questions? All right, let's begin. We'll start with the application FY21 IAP Bronaugh. The first reader is Nazreen. Nazreen, will you lead us off, please?
Hi, this application seemed pretty thorough. One of the questions I had about it was in the area of community engagement. So this application says that they will provide an arts class through the Arts Council of Southern Indiana, but I wanted to know more about how the applicant was going to disseminate that information to the community. So I know they're working through an arts community center, but what they would be doing to make sure that there was an equitable distribution of access to that community resource that they would become through this grant. Some of their strengths are that they have a very clear plan of action and that they already have a very they have a clear plan of action that's clearly laid out in the application, and that because they'll be working with the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana, they have a brick and mortar space to work out of. I think that was the summary of my comments on this one.
Okay, Ruth Ann, we may have muted you, so give me just a second to unmute you.
Thank you, Nazreen. Our second reader is Andy, please.
Sure, I agree with pretty much everything Nazreen mentioned earlier. I think certainly a strength of this was the idea for at least loose public engagement, although I think it would have been improved by having a little bit more of a clearly defined program on how to advertise to people, how to get others included. And also the model cost was a real bulk, I think, of the of the budget. And I wasn't quite sure how the models were going to be chosen, if this was going to be an open call. If only using social media, that would certainly limit the model pool from who's socially engaged with the applicant for this proposal. And another strength I'd like to emphasize too is the talent of the artist, and certainly the portfolio was strong on figural portraiture, which is really the thrust of this application.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any new or opposing comments?
This is just like an addition. I agree with the work, the quality of the work. It was hard to find because the images weren't attached, and it makes a lot more sense once you find the artist. The link in the portfolio wasn't working for me, so I had to do dig a little deeper, so it would make it stronger to have that, like to have the images attached to understand the artist practice better.
Thank you, Esteban. Anyone else? None being noted, I'm going to ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
Good job, everyone. Those are great comments. Good work.
If anyone needs more time, please speak up. All right, in that case, I'm going to move ahead to the next applicant, which is Brubaker, and our first reader is Monica, please.
I muted again, and it's not allowing me to unmute for you.
We hear you, Monica.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom of your Zoom controls, you'll have unmute option. It'll have a little picture of a phone.
Monica, say something so we know if you're turned on.
Yeah, she's trying to. For some reason, it's not allowing either us to unmute. I will send her a message.
Okay, hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I finally found the application. Yes, I thought this was a good application. The only question I had with this one is I didn't see much of a community engagement. From what I recall, she wanted to exhibit the artwork outside the IU Kokomo Art Gallery, but there was not going to be any sort of talk or lecture associated with it. So that was maybe not the best part of the application. If she had included something like that, it would have made it stronger. So otherwise, she wanted to travel to Yellowstone to find inspiration there. Well, that's where I had another problem maybe, because it wasn't quite clear what kind of inspiration she was looking for other than nature in general. So I wanted to see something more specific about it. Other than that, I had no problem with it.
Our second reader will be Natalie, please.
Okay, I agree with Monica on a lot of these points, especially about the community engagement. I thought maybe if the artist included something like a guided nature hike or something like that, where she could share what she learned, that might have made a stronger community engagement side of things. And then just a little bit more building on Monica's points. Yeah, I agree that it wasn't totally clear why Yellowstone. So I think it could have been strengthened by showing like a specific plan. What trails would you hike? What ecosystems are you looking for? Why Yellowstone and not another national park? Because she is doing these beautiful abstract leaf formations. And so I was curious again how the sort of general nature side of this, the learning from Yellowstone, would apply directly to her work. So I think just understanding why specifically Yellowstone would be better and provide a stronger conceptual framework. And let's see, yeah, I think that is my only comments building on what Monica said.
Thank you, Natalie. Are there any new or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. I'm going to move ahead to our next applicant, which is Eickmeier, and our first reader is Esteban.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So yeah, this proposal, the artist quality is very good. The impact of an artist's career was very well justified. It was easy to find information. The style of work matches the concepts that they are going for. So I think that that was successful. Their public benefit of the plan of outreach through artist talks just shows that they know what they're doing, reaching out to the community. And I think that room for improvement is that the budget could be more detailed. It was very broad. So I would like to see like something more granular. And I think other than that, that's what I commented. Let me see if I'm missing something. No, that's it. The artwork itself is also abstract, inspired by fluid motions and nature. So I think it was very interesting as far as the quality.
Thank you, Esteban. Our second reader will be Julie.
Yes, I concur with a lot of what Esteban said. I felt that the work examples of this applicant were very strong. I thought that the way they wrote about their work was very strong, lots of really great descriptions. I felt if there was something lacking for me as a reader, it was a very clear description of what the actual work was that she was going to make in terms of more specific descriptions of media, maybe a little bit more description of the scale. I had a hard time clearly envisioning what the applicant's proposed project was really going to be. So that was, if I could have asked for something else, it would have been a little bit more descriptions about the proposed project visually. One other note that I made, I think that their proposal for community engagement was very strong, talking about the gallery talks, et cetera. But I was wondering what she was going to be doing proactively to be reaching out to the Indiana school teachers in order to actually receive the classroom visit requests that she was anticipating. She said she was going to create lesson plan packets for teachers that request them. I don't know, I was just kind of wondering, I would have felt a little bit more confident about that if I had read kind of a proposal for, is she going to send out packets? Is it going to be, how is she going to contact them? How are teachers going to know that this is available to them? But other than that, I felt very strong about this applicant.
Thank you for those comments, Julie. Are there any new or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you panelists to finalize your scores and update your online comments, please. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Fantuzzo, and our first reader is Andy, please.
Well, this applicant clearly defined, I think, career trajectory, aligned the project, the proposed project rather, with broader themes of motherhood, how those themes affected and linked to artistic development. And I think a lot of artist identity and career experience was woven into this application. The applicant had been removed from artistic practice until relatively recently, and that had an impact on the work, both positive and negative, that were outlined. The public engagement proposal was pretty good. I think it got better on repeated reads, I have to say. There was an emphasis on local community and specifically Northwest Indiana, and that was pretty clear. There could have been a little bit more on school engagement, but my sense was that was not the only public engagement avenue that this artist was really interested in. Workshops were more of this applicant's interest, I suspect, and certainly as expressed. I think the timeline was reasonable. Available time might have been a little bit ambitious. I had one concern on this one, and that was the budget. The cash expenses didn't really match the project expenses. I thought something was missing here, and I think there's a possibility that studio space wasn't woven into the budget, but was accounted for at one point. Overall, I felt pretty well about this application.
Thank you, Andy. Our second reader will be Monica, please.
Yes, I thought this was a really strong application. I especially like the community engagement portion of this application because she said that she was going to do a studio tour, a pop-up exhibit, artist lecture, and school visits, and she specifically wanted to talk to school children about portrait art. So I thought that was really good and really strong. Also, I don't know if this is really a criterion that we can use, but she wants to jumpstart her career after 7 years. So I think, you know, this money would probably make a difference in that. And the artwork that she submitted had a pretty strong connection to what she wants to do.
Thank you, Monica. Good comments. Are there any new or opposing comments from other panelists?
Yes, I had a concern that the community engagement piece was really robust, but it didn't seem to have a clear path of action. So it didn't seem like the artist had contacted teachers or educators that were going to give her access to an audience to teach. So I think that would have made the application stronger, is doing some of that prep work beforehand so that she already had, if you're doing a school tour or teaching school children, who are the school children? How are you disseminating access to that? Is it a public school? Is it, I'd just like some more information about that.
Good observation. Any other new or opposing comments?
Yes, in addition to what was just said, I had trouble finding images to understand the artist's trajectory. I acknowledge that they have been off for 7 years, but I want to get a better idea of what their work is like and what type of painting that they're talking about. My main concern was in that rubric of artist quality. I didn't have like ways to assess that. And the other aspect was that, I mean, it's related. It's like, it would just be good to see something, to see what they're capable of. I just don't think that funds lack of funds shouldn't be a stopper for not making art. I think that there needs to be like some sort of like practice. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments?
If I could respond to Esteban, were you able to access the artist's website? There was limited images on the portfolio, but one thing that I could be wrong about this, but I read this application pretty early on, and then returned to it a few days ago, just in rereading and prepping for the meeting. And it looked to me like the artist's website was a little bit different on the second read. And that just might be the cloudiness of looking at it over a period of 2 months or a month and a half. But that might give you an idea before we submit final scores.
Yes. I wasn't able to find the website at all. Like I looked, and I just don't know if you can send it through the chat, but I did look at this application several times and couldn't find links. Okay.
Yep, let me send you that. It was included in the application, so I do want to make sure that you're able to evaluate what she submitted. So
Okay,
I'm going to send it
yes.
to you directly in a chat, and please take a look at it before the end of the meeting. And if you still need more time, let me know.
Yeah, this helps me to evaluate better. Thank you.
Yeah, if any of you had any trouble accessing any artistic documentation, please let me know so that I can rectify that for you.
I actually missed this applicant's portfolio until we were going through this right now, and I saw the link or the copy paste ability for her website. But the first round through, I thought there was no artistic documentation attached.
Okay. Yep, it was a website.
That's what I thought at first too, when I first reviewed the application, and then I looked at everything last night again, and then I finally found the portfolio, but only when I clicked on the evaluation and I saw the side-by-side between the application and the evaluation, then I saw it. But when I first pulled up the application just on its own, then I didn't see it. I wonder if the way she attached it had something to do with it.
So if you all have not pulled that up to look at that, you probably should do so before you score. And you can come back and do that. Are there additional comments? All right, I will ask you then, if you're able to score at this time, to go ahead and score and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Does anyone need more time?
Yes.
Okay. How about let me know when you've finished your scoring?
Yeah, thank you.
Please.
Okay. Okay, I'm ready. Sorry.
Thank you. We're going to move ahead to our next applicant, who is Fillenwarth, and our first reader is Natalie, please.
Okay, so this is the project that's creating 100 paintings of 100 suffragists. I thought this was a really interesting project idea and could have a really good community engagement side to it. So it was relevant, it was timely. It is pretty ambitious for such a short time frame, but the artist acknowledges that. So I think that's important, is that she knows how much work it is. So her aim was to finish them by August. I don't necessarily think she has to finish them by that specific anniversary. She could do it like a centennial year or something and exhibit it throughout 2020 to 2021 or something. But there's a couple ways that if it becomes too unmanageable, she might be able to kind of narrow the scope a little, where instead of breaking it up and having a number of different exhibitions throughout the country. I thought it would be nice, since she's a Hoosier artist, to show them in one place in Indiana that maybe is relevant near the State House or something. But maybe highlight the Hoosier women in some way to orient it towards an Indiana audience. Or if that's kind of too big, making the images of the Hoosier women first and then doing an Indiana-based exhibition could be another way just to make it less overwhelming, I think. And then lastly, in terms of the blog, I thought that was an interesting part of this and would be important, because I actually learned a lot about some women that I didn't know about just from reading the application. So I think a lot of these women people don't know. And so the blog will be really important that people can go and investigate. I was curious how it would be advertised. So how would people find the blog? Because I think it's so important to the community engagement side of things that I think it'll be important to make sure that it's effectively promoted too. But that's it for me on this one.
All right, thank you. Our second reader will be Nazreen.
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of the impressions of the first reader. I had concerns that the project was very nationally focused and didn't have an emphasis or a narrowing on Indiana audiences. And so I would have liked to hear more about how the artist's project was going to honor the community engagement piece that is specific to Indiana audiences. Secondly, I also commented on the blog, and my question was like some data about what the readership and reach numbers of the artist's personal blog. That would have been helpful just to get an understanding of what the size and scope of the audience was or is, and if that data was not yet available, sort of what the first reader said as well was what is the plan for disseminating that information?
Nazreen. Thank you, Nazreen. Are there any new or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
Ruthann, just so you know, we are getting some feedback from your phone line while the other panelists are speaking. I think that their voice comes through your phone again. So if while they are speaking, if you could keep yourself on mute, that would really help the quality.
I don't know how to mute my cell phone. Oh yeah, I do. Take it off a speakerphone.
There might be a mute button on your screen on your phone, or you can hit *6, I believe, also mutes yourself.
Can hit what?
*6.
Okay. I will try that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move ahead to our next applicant, who is Heichel, and our first reader is Julie.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and go down through my comments in the order in which I read through the evaluation, and I felt that this. You know, my first impression is that the work of this applicant was very strong. I was really impressed with the work in the image samples, and one impression that I was left with was that I felt that the work itself was more intriguing than the way that the artist actually wrote about it or spoke about it. I wish that the artist's statements in their project description talked in more detail about his actual choices of subject matter, composition, concept. I felt that he mentions his work as being, you know, traditional rural and urban scenes, but to me it seems that they're really compositions that are uniquely sort of selected for specific emotional effects, and I wish that he had talked about that a little bit more. In terms of the community engagement, you know, I think that talking about exhibiting the work and having to be open to Indiana audiences is shows, you know, I guess a pretty broad way of demonstrating community engagement. I did feel like when he was talking about community engagement, a lot of his answer kind of focused on collectors and potential patrons, and that was an impression. It made an impression on me that the artist was, and this may not be true, but it made an impression on me that the artist was more primarily interested in the selling of his work than really like a wider community engagement. But that may not actually be true. It was just the impression that I read through his application. I felt that the timeline seemed well researched and doable. I was a little bit hung up on the fact that the solo show in 2020 was it seemed to me somewhat of a presumption, unless I am overlooking it, and maybe another reader can correct me. I didn't see an actual note of where the solo exhibit would be held. I saw a lot of mention of juried shows that he's applying to, but in terms of the solo show, you know, it's just sort of a presumption at this point. And as a curator personally, I know how difficult it really can be for people to actually procure solo exhibits. It's not necessarily something that you can think about as a given, and so it seemed a little bit perhaps presumptuous to me. Those are my main comments, but in general, I felt really confident about this artist's ability to produce a great new body of work.
Thank you very much, Julie. Our second reader will be Andy.
Thanks, Ruth Ann. Like with Julie, I think a real driving force in this application was the quality of work that was documented by the artist. It's accomplished and very much demonstrates an interest in the proposed subject of the project. And likewise, I would have appreciated a little bit of information on when and where those works of the past were displayed, and a bit more on the proposed exhibitions. My sense too was that a lot will depend on acceptance into juried art shows and exhibitions. And given the quality of the work, it's pretty likely, but still an unknown. The costs were appropriate. I think the travel may have been a little bit under budgeted, but again, that depends on where these works of art are shown. In terms of community engagement, I think a lot was directed at Indiana residents and their local environments. And much of the proposal suggested that the work would reflect the local environments of the viewers. But there was a bit of a disconnect in specific communities being reflected, rather than just the broad urban and rural images that are really the forte of this artist. And I think a lot of the continued engagement was strongly personal in nature, rather than based on the art itself. And perhaps, I think Julie touched on this as well, perhaps part of some missing aspects, I thought, of this application could be found elsewhere. For example, the artist's narrative didn't really touch on some of the major parts of the artist's resume, which included, I think, 6 years as a creative mentor. but activities in those roles were a little bit unclear. I would have appreciated a little bit more weaving in of the artist's background that would demonstrate how some of the proposed activities of the project would be activated. But overall, I think the artwork itself was pretty strong, and the idea is pretty strong as well. It's the actualization of it that I had a few questions on.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any new or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. We'll move ahead to the next applicant, Johnson application, and Esteban will be our first reader, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought that these artist paintings were excellent thematically and visually. So in regard to the artist quality, I think that is strong, especially in the oil paintings. I think that there still needs to improve on the digital painting aspects. Maybe learn a little bit more about how to make it not blurry. But I think that this is something that this grant could help them with, like with that practice, because they do already have like a background in painting. They explain their artist career very well. They are committed to the art practice and to create new body of work. This artist is highly involved with the community. They understand very well how to engage, how to create opportunities for other people outside the art world to connect with their practice. So I think that they propose like some art events that seem very exciting. And feasibility, it all seems possible. I was just curious why they gave themselves only 4 months for painting. They could have said 6 months, but I was just like basically just curious. I didn't have any other comments from this proposal.
Thank you, Esteban. Our second reader will be Monica.
Yes, I thought this was a good application. I especially like the community engagement portion of it. He wanted to have discussions about the artwork, but what I especially liked that if he had extra money, then he was planning to buy extra canvases so that other people could paint with him. So that's definitely strong community engagement. And obviously he cares about history. Sounds like he's involved he's maybe involved in some political activity. He wants to document the history of discrimination, which definitely resonates with a lot of people. So I thought it was a good, strong application.
Are there any new or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. All right, I'm going to suggest we're close to 10:30. Let's do one more application, then we'll be halfway through, and then we can take a break. Our next applicant is Jurincie, and our first reader is Nazarene.
Sorry, I just got kind of disconnected here. Let me find where I am. This application had some, what was interesting for me was that much of the budget was allocated to lighting. So one of the concerns I had was that the community engagement portion was mainly directed towards the applicant as an art instructor. So it was mainly directed towards existing students of the applicants. And I would have liked to know a little bit more about how he was going, or the applicant was going to widen that gathering. I know the application says he'd like to start an artist gathering once a month where beginning and advanced artists can come to work. But I would have liked to see how that was going to be advertised. I know he said posted on Facebook, but that again limits like your audience and the type of people that you're reaching. So I would have liked to see a little bit more thoroughness there. Let's see. The artist's portfolio definitely supported the project that they proposed. And one concern I had was, or comment, not concern so much, is that the budget did not seem to put in numbers for this monthly artist gathering that they're talking about. So what is the overhead on that? Will there be refreshments? That kind of thing would have been helpful to see in terms of the budget. And I think that was the summary of my comments.
Thank you, Nazarene. Our second reader is Esteban.
Yes, thank you. I thought this was a strong proposal. The motivation for the community, or like the reasoning, is very community-based. One of the things that struck me was the outreach to elderly people who paint. Like it has like a very that target focus, and they have already been doing that for the time being. So it is like doing an important service for the community through art. So it did make sense to me that they're requesting for these lights so they can help their community continue, not just like the artists practice themselves, but also the community activities. So it seems like they have this place that is already functional as a classroom, but it's also the artist studio. So it does have this space kind of, I guess like the way that I understood it is that it already embeds some of the things that we're looking at as far as public benefit and feasibility. But yeah, the comments that Nazarene said are correct, that the budget could be more detailed. It seems like they're willing to front in money out of their pocket, and they just want IIC to fund for the lights, for the studio lights, if I understood correctly.
Thank you, Esteban. Are there any new or opposing comments from the readers? None being noted, I'll ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments, please. Let me know if you need more time. All right. Anna, would you want us to take a break now?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break, then return at 10:35 Eastern.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks, panelists.
Right back. All right, Ruthann.
All right, we'll go back to the application of Jesse Johnson. And Anna, do you want to redo the readers or just open it to the panelists?
We'll just open it up to the full panel for discussion.
All right. Any comments on this application? Julie, I think you had some. You want to chime in?
Yes, thanks for letting me go back to this. I was a little bit lost when we were doing this the first round. I apologize if this had already been brought up and I didn't hear it, but I had a few questions about this artist's application. One, it seemed to me that the CV that was provided indicated that this artist was still currently a student. And I think that's I believe that is a disqualifier from this grant. They may have just been not updated, but there were a couple things on the CV that I saw that were a little inconsistent and wondered if anybody else had seen that. Another question that I had about this application is that in the community engagement area, and again, I'm so sorry if this was already brought up. I was a little bit confused when we were doing this before, but there really weren't very many details about the actual community engagement Q&A, how that would work. And then most importantly, their project management, there really wasn't a timeline for how they were going to be completing their proposed project. So again, forgive me if this was already brought up. I wanted to share those with the panel.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate you bringing up the eligibility question, and I will go back and confirm either way with the applicant. That's a great point, and you're correct that if they are enrolled in a degree granting program, they're not eligible. But for now, if you all, the whole panel, evaluate this application with the assumption that they're still eligible, and then I'll confirm, and that will impact whether they are funded or not.
Thank you, Julie and Anna. Do any of you other panelists have any other comments in reference to this applicant?
Yeah, and I'm glad we went back to it too. I just couldn't hit my unmute button in time before. So thank you, Julie, for bringing this up. I did also have some questions about community engagement insofar as there doesn't seem to have been much of a plan for feasibility of success. And even the projected budget, it's a single, it's not as perhaps, it's detailed, but there doesn't seem to be any indication of where the rental space will be. There's certainly costs associated, but no straightforward plan in the community engagement portion for how this event will be able to take place. And that was a concern that I definitely had as well.
Thank you. Take a minute here if you need to look back at your scoring, if any of these comments have affected your scoring, because you can update your online scoring comments now if you would like to. I'll give you a minute.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. You're doing a great job facilitating. I know it's difficult on this online platform to kind of figure out who, you know, if it's the right time to speak up. So please do not hesitate. Assume that if you have something to say, you should speak out. So at any point in this meeting, please interrupt us if we're moving too quickly.
All right, I'm going to move ahead to our next applicant, who is Lee, and our first reader will be Natalie, please.
Okay, thank you. So with Lee, I thought this was a good and clearly defined project. I like that the artist had already reached out to the 2 master artists she wants to study with, and that there's exhibition space for the final show arranged. And I like the idea of using a public event like a Final Friday gallery walk for the opening, because I know from my experience that those get a lot of community members coming in. So I thought the community engagement part was strong. She's gonna take what she learned and use it in her own classes at the retirement center. So not only is it about community engagement, but she's serving at an underserved population. So I liked that. And I pictured the residents of the retirement home being able to use these skills that they just discovered in portraiture to maybe kind of tell their own stories through the people they've met throughout their life. So I thought it was a noble goal. And I actually thought it could have been highlighted even more in the application. It didn't get lost, but I think it was one of like 3 kind of key things she was doing. The main thing I was wondering about was largely with the timeline. So I was wondering if she had to do the exhibit in September. So she's studying with the 2 artists from July to December, and then the exhibition is going to be in September, so right in the middle of that. So since she's showing at a Final Friday gallery walk, presumably this happened once a month. So I was thinking that it might be a good idea to kind of push that further into the year, just to give her a little bit more time to learn from these 2 artists and absorb the techniques and make a good quality body of work that's kind of based on the skills that she kind of honed with them. So that was the main thing, was mostly just with the schedule. It seemed a little rushed, I guess, as I don't see a need why it has to be in September necessarily. And I think that is it with my comments.
Thank you, Natalie. Our second reader will be Julie, please.
Yes, I agree with much of what Natalie was saying. I thought that the proposal was very well researched in highlighting these instructors that she felt that she'd be able to learn a lot from. I agree very much on the importance of the particular goals of her community engagement proposal with the a senior older adult population. The things that I believed would have made a stronger application, I felt that her portfolio examples didn't really demonstrate her goals, and I don't necessarily think that weakens her application, I guess, in the fact that she wants to learn more about portraiture, she wants to learn more about painting people, and on the one hand, her portfolio only had 1 portrait in it, 1 person, as far as I was able to see. So I felt that, you know, in some ways her portfolio didn't really demonstrate her interest in portraiture. On the other hand, I can see how her portfolio, you know, maybe it really highlights her lack of experience in doing portraiture, and that in some ways strengthens her proposal. But anyway, I just thought it was a little bit, I was a little bit surprised to see that there was not an emphasis on portraiture in her work samples. The timeline, the only other thing I would add to what Natalie said is that it looks to me that she only left 1 month to actually complete her paintings from, I believe it was August to September is what it said in her timeline, that was the time she was going to give herself to create the new body of work. Now, maybe I'm reading that wrong, and if so, someone can speak up, but I just don't feel confident that she would be able to create that body of work that she's wanting to do in just 1 month. It would be difficult for anyone. I think I would recommend that she really give herself much more time to create the body of work. So those are my main comments.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate your comments. Are there any new or opposing comments? None being noted. I'm going to ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments, please. Let me know if you need more time. I'm going to move ahead to the next applicant. Not sure about the pronunciation. Michna is our applicant, and our first reader will be Andy, please.
Thanks, Ruth Ann.
Sure.
Well, this artist's application is basically to support the partnership in an exhibition in New Harmony, Indiana, that is being hosted by the fairly well-known artist collective in Indianapolis, Big Car. So as far as individual advancement goes, like that's pretty well hitting all the marks when it comes to Indiana. I did have some questions about what the show will do for the artists, other than this is another step in exhibiting their work. Certainly the artist has a lot of experience. The resume supports that. The materials from the artist could have been a bit better detailed, I think. They appear to be digital manipulations of stray cats superimposed on other images, some photography, some existing artwork. The bulk of the cost for this project is going to be the printing of materials and 3 nights overnight stay in Indianapolis. I did have some question about the multimedia art. Is it entirely digital? How are they going to be printed? What sizes, what finish, and what are the costs? Because the estimates just sort of say $200 each. This is no doubt, a good opportunity for any artist, but the art is already created. So I'm not entirely sure what this grant accomplishes for the proposal. And one area that could have really been improved upon is the community engagement. It is an art show, yes, and it is open to the public, but there doesn't seem to be anything in addition that was provided by the applicant insofar as how public engagement will be reached, if there's any programming involved outside of a general discussion and answer question. So those are some, positives and questions I have both about the applicant.
Thank you, Andy, for this insightful comments. Our second reader will be Esteban.
Yes, thank you. I agree with what Andy said. I didn't see how much of the impact of this grant, because it seems like they already have the show. And additionally, thematically, in the quality, I was not able to tell what the project is. There's some mention about stray cats, but they're not explained conceptually. Just judging at the images, there's stray cats combined with different photo manipulations, but I didn't understand the conceptual relationship. And as far as like the budget, it was extremely vague. And I think that the timelines were also very vague. So it would be really good to know, like, okay, how much does it cost, like, to print on these materials? So it just seemed like it needed like further development.
Thank you, Esteban. Appreciate that. Do we have any new or opposing comments, panelists?
This is Natalie. I just wanted to kind of add to that, that yeah, I think a better description of what exactly this collaboration is would be good. Like, I know what Big Car is, but what is that collaboration with Big Car and New Harmony Social Alchemy Project? There's a link to the website which gives a little better description, but I'd like to see that in the application. So I, again, like what Esteban and Andy were saying, it didn't seem clear what all of this had, what the connections were and what the conceptual framework was. Do the stray cat tie into that, the utopian visions of what the project website says? Is it, I don't know, is it drawing attention to large numbers of stray cats? Is it supposed to be humorous? So again, that conceptual framework I think was missing. So just an explanation in the application of what that collaborative project is exactly with I think.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate that. Additional comments, new or opposing? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
Good work, everyone. Thank you so much for your thoughtful comments.
All right, I'm going to move ahead to our next applicant, who is Scharringhausen, and our first reader is Monica, please.
Yes, I thought this was a good application, but maybe a little bit too ambitious. She wants to create 52 paintings, so I don't know if that's actually feasible within the time frame that she wants to do it in. One of my other issues was that she wants to start the exhibit in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, so I kind of wanted to see more of an Indiana connection to it. But it seems like she already has the pre-existing connection in Minnesota, so that's probably the explanation for it. Sounds like she's still looking for the Indiana space to exhibit. She wants to do a talk and a reception, so there's some community engagement. What I liked about it is, again, she's a mother who took some time off, so she wants to jumpstart her career, so that's probably so this grant would probably make a difference for her to do that. So the artwork that she submitted had connection to the application, so I thought that was pretty good too. So pretty strong application.
Thank you very much, Monica. Our second reader is Nazarene, please.
I found this application very strong, particularly in the public participation arena. The artist definitely targets a very specific audience. And so I appreciated that it's an under-targeted group in the arts arena. And so the artist says MOPS groups in the area and local organizations who support new mothers, and that she already has, you know, a partner to work with, South Shore Arts. So one one comment in this area was that I would have liked to have some specificity on what those local organizations are, or if those organizations are still to be determined, what the determination criteria would be for the artist. So are we talking about organizations like the Julian Center or the Damien Center that are talking about mothers in that demographic that are struggling with housing insecurity, or are we talking about you know, La Leche League? What are the demographics that you're targeting, and what is the rubric that you're using to make sure that you're providing equitable distribution of art? And so I know I sound like a broken record, and I keep, every readership I keep saying, how are you rubricing equitable distribution? But I think that it's just so important, particularly in publicly funded art, that we're making sure as artists, I know for myself, it's very easy to just reach out to my immediate art community and not think beyond that. So I would encourage that. The other comment I had here was that it does seem as though so the artist says she wants to open up a visual conversation for other mothers to share their experience as well. And that's through visual storytelling and open dialogue. So I know that there would be a blank watercolor journal with an invitation. Okay, I'm sorry, that comment actually does not hold water. I was reading that as one blank page instead of one blank watercolor journal. So yes, that is an ongoing way of reaching the community. I did have some questions about feasibility because this is the first solo exhibition for this artist, and I know that they have familiarity as a gallery manager, but it's very different from the artist's side of it. So I would encourage a little bit of like retweaking in terms of timeline. And I think that is the summation of my comments.
Thank you very much, Nazreen. Do we have any new or opposing comments to be added?
I'd like to add something.
Sure.
I am, this is a comment that I made for another applicant too, something that's kind of a sticking point for me. But unless I'm mistaken, it seems that this applicant is opening with saying that they are going to have 3 solo exhibitions, and one of them at the Lou Besnick Center for the Arts in Michigan City, Indiana, has not actually responded to her inquiry. I think it's presumptuous to list that in your application when you haven't even heard back from the gallery staff. And it's just, again, you know, she has experience working at a gallery, so I'm a little bit surprised that she would include that when there's no sign that it's actually something that's really going to happen. It was a little baffling for me that that was included, and that definitely for me affected the way I thought of her application.
Thank you, Julie, for those additional comments. Anyone else have new or opposing comments?
Yes, I did have a comment that I did not mention during my turn. I had some questions about the bulk of the budget being spent to display art outside of Indiana. So I know that the artist does say, you know, Michigan City, Indiana, and Hammond, Indiana, but much of the budget is about going to Grand Rapids. And so I was wondering if that could be brought into balance a little bit more, and sort of what the rationale was for emphasizing, particularly monetarily emphasizing, the Grand Rapids exhibit, as opposed to trying to find space and spending resources on more Indiana focused exhibits.
Thank you, Nazreen. Additional comments?
Susanna, sorry. I just wanted to clarify, and I believe, Nazreen, that you're thinking in the right direction. And as far as eligibility and how funds can be used, I think you know this, but just wanted to clarify that there's no requirement, at least from our end, on where the funds need to be spent, as long as they're spent in the United States. But I think that your comments are more directed at where you, as a Hoosier and as a panelist, believe, and as an expert in providing public programming, I think that your comments are more directed to how to make those public programming things happen in Indiana. But just wanted to clarify that there's not a requirement for spending those funds in Indiana.
I see.
Thank you, Anna.
I see. So there's no requirement for spending funds in Indiana. Is it at all encouraged, or is that is the Indiana component not part of it? I looked at your the video there, but just for further clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. So the criterion is that there are activities that are identified. This is under public benefit and community engagement. There are activities identified that are open to the public or directed toward a specific Indiana audience that will benefit from the artist's work. And then, of course, there's another bullet point in that category, but that's the only thing that's required to be in Indiana, is that it's directed toward either open to the public or directed toward a specific Indiana audience. Again, the funds themselves may or may not be related to making that aspect happen, right? So if you believe that in order to make this aspect happen, that those funds need to be invested more into those Indiana events, then that's relevant. But there's not any specific requirement for spending the funds. Make sense?
It does make sense, and that does change the view of the scoring. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you all for your comments. Are there any additional comments at this point?
I had one. Sorry, this is Natalie.
Sure, Natalie.
The artist says that they're gonna, with the journal, they're gonna have people write their stories and then share it later at Art and Focus talk. So I just wanted to recommend to make it clear to the people writing in the journals that these would be shared at that talk, presumably anonymously, but even then making sure that they know that they might be shared would be important in case someone shares something deeply personal that, you know, that they think they're just writing in a journal. So just to make it somehow clear in the signage for that journal that they'll be part of that Art and Focus talk.
Good comment. Anyone else? I'm going to ask you at this time to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. I'm going to move ahead to our next applicant, who is Stockert, and our first reader will be Julie, please.
Yes. Okay, so this applicant, as you know, is proposing to create a vlog, and I think my my first reaction to her work is I really was impressed with the illustration work that she was doing with Cat People Press. I thought her samples were really strong. My my concerns lie with the proposed project and in terms of how it really relates to her own work. I had a little bit of a mental struggle trying to understand the way that how the content of her vlog is going to really help with her design and watercolor and illustration work itself, because the vlog that she wants to create is not actually about illustration or watercolor or design necessarily. It's about how to create a video on how to make work, any type of work. So wrapping my mind around that a little bit was a little bit tricky, but you know, I understand it. I understand what she's doing. Then I think my concern, my second concern was the fact that she's only going to make one video vlog as a part of this proposed project. She says that it takes about 12 hours to create one of these videos. And in her proposal, unless I'm mistaken, it says that she is going to need potentially a whole year to accomplish this. So I felt that the application would be stronger if she had proposed maybe a series of videos. Doing one in the span of an entire year just feels a little bit, it doesn't feel very ambitious to me. I would have liked to see a little bit more ambition in terms of, you know, how is this equipment that she's going to be purchasing with this grant really going to be taking her beyond just this one video? How is it going to really overlap with her work as an illustrator? Some of that was missing for me, you know, but I do think that it looks like a very well-researched budget in terms of what she actually wants. It looks like she really knows what she wants. Yeah, I really felt that the application could have been a little bit stronger in terms of what she was actually proposing to do with this equipment.
All right, Julie, thank you for those comments. Our second reader will be Natalie, please.
Okay, hi. So this might help Julie a little. The way that I interpreted the idea of creating a vlog, I think what she meant was she's, in the same way that you create a blog, and a blog has blog posts, a number of different blog posts. I think she's talking about creating the vlog as a whole. And I assume that she was going to be doing a number of these posts, so that she'd be creating the vlog and then doing a series of vlog posts. And she gave two as samples, two vlog posts. So that, I guess, clearly is something that should be clarified more. But that's how I interpreted it. And I'd like to hear from the other panelists to see what they thought about that. But in terms of the videos, I was curious how they would be, how they'd be promoted, and how they would the artist would seek a larger audience. I do think they'd be appealing to a lot of people, but how do you get those people to watch them? So I saw that the videos that were used as a sample, they were only viewed a couple of times, and it's possible that those were just samples and that those weren't released to the public. I couldn't tell. But I think that a big part of this, obviously, is to make sure that there's a big viewership, as wide of a viewership as possible in order for the project to be successful. So I think understanding a little better how that would be promoted and disseminated would be key. But other than that, that's all I have to comment on here. Thanks.
Thank you, Natalie. I'll ask for any new or opposing comments, panelists.
Yes, in addition to the ambiguity of the blog and the amount of videos that we're going to produce, that were going to be produced. It wasn't very clear who was producing the videos. She did show an example of like a demo of what she does, which I think is really interesting. But throughout the application, she's talking about helping other artists make their blog. So I just didn't know, like, it would make sense if she wants to create this resource of her tutorials for the community. That would be something valuable, but it seemed like she was requesting the funds for making blogs for help them with marketing, sense if she just wants to help herself. So I was really confused of what the outcomes were going to be. Is it videos from other artists, or is it videos from her tutorials? So, but I agree with everything else that was said. Like, the quality is, the artist quality is very good. The videos could be a little better. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Esteban. Are there new or opposing comments?
Just perhaps one more. I think I was also a little bit in the dark as to what this artist wanted to do, but what I think she wants to do is really to create the blog or vlog, and she wants to help other artists market their work. So that's the purpose of the blog or vlog. So I don't see any creation of artwork in this. I think this grant is really just for marketing purposes rather than the creation of artwork. So that's it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to also say that I could be interpreting this this wrong, and I really appreciate Natalie's interpretation that there's a series, but when I read the proposal, she repeatedly refers to what she's going to create as a video, a 3 to 4 minute video. And there's no, if this is what she meant, then she should have said series, because I don't see the word series of videos anywhere in the application.
All right. Thank you, Julie. Additional comments? I'm going to ask you at this time to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
I just wanted to add to, I do now see where Julie was talking about there, that it does indeed say video singular. So just wanted to point that out and emphasize that. So thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Go ahead and do your scoring, please.
We've got about 15 minutes left in the meeting and about 4 more applications to move through. So if you could, yeah, we'll do our best to be concise, but still, of course, speak up if you have something to say.
Very good. Thank you, Anna. I'm going to move ahead to our next applicant, Tackitt, and our first reader is Esteban.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so my comments on the impact on artist career, the description of the project or what they want to do is very vague. I wasn't able to tell what the artwork is about. The quality of the work is excellent. I think it's interesting. I just want to know more about how you choose your subjects, and perhaps talk about that, not just talk about art in general, but talk about like the themes that you're dealing with. As far as public benefit, the artist has a place where they will be able to show and create work because they are already key members of, she's volunteering in this art center. So she does have like some connection that could help her with this, promoting this work. And in feasibility, it seemed okay and doable, but there's like some statements that kind of like make you take a step back, like I'm going to quote, display the artworks finished or not. She's going to display the artworks that are finished or not. So that makes it seem like you will not actually carry through with your work. So it would be better to know and be more concrete about what will be produced, how many paintings, etc. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Esteban, for your comments. Our second reader will be Monica, please.
Yes, I also have the same feeling that there's some vagueness in this application as to what she's going to create. I have this feeling that maybe she'll just wait for inspiration, because this seems to be really kind of community-based. She wants to basically sit somewhere and watch and have other people watch her paint. So maybe she will just kind of go with the flow and wait for inspiration. So that's vague. On the other hand, I really like the community aspect to it, that she's painting in front of people. People will be able to learn from her, watch her. So and then she will be available for discussion. So that portion of it made the application fairly strong to me.
Thank you, Monica. Do we have any new or opposing comments?
I think I had some clarifying comments. So I hear the my fellow panelists saying there's some vagueness, and I just wanted to make sure that I know, I mean, as a writing teacher, I just want to note that the supporting documentation for what the artist is trying to communicate just is almost there, but not quite. So the artist writes, I'm still in the early stages of my career, but I have a clear vision of where I'm at and what I want to achieve. And I think all of us are voicing that it would be helpful for the artist to have shared that vision and goals. So we, the readers, could share that vision as well. And in the artistic career goals, they say they want to solidify their skills and share their philosophy by communicating about their work and developing new ideas, telling stories. It just would have been easier to share that vision if that philosophy was communicated here, if the specific skills they wanted to solidify were listed here, if some of the story arcs that they wanted to focus on were listed here. And so they say very vaguely, I want to gain more knowledge while sharing the knowledge. And just a little bit of direction would have really helped me as a reader to understand the thrust of this application, as well as some data on the Dillsborough arts. So I think there'll be a wide range of artists, and she's seen individuals from 40 to 90 at the gallery, and I assume she's talking about ages, but some data on the statistics of numbers. So what is the reach of her sitting there and being available to talk? Is she expecting 6 people in a day? Is she expecting 60? Some understanding of scope would have been helpful for me as a reader.
Thank you, Nazarene, for those comments. Additional comments?
First, I really appreciate what Nazarene had to say, and that I think you're right on, and some of the disconnect between what the artist wants to do and how the artist explains they're going to do it. But one thing I really wanted to add was that over half of the requested amount of this grant goes to the artist fee, which I presume is the applicant's fee of $25 an hour, 8 hours a month for 6 months. I think that's something that's worth considering as well.
Thank you, Andy. Additional comments? None being noted, I'm going to ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Tucker, and our first reader will be Natalie, please.
Okay, so this was a project about making an illustration for her band's vinyl record cover. The artist's body of work, I thought it seemed appropriate for album cover illustration. I liked that she had a strong, recognizable style. It seemed like something that would be ideal for album cover art. I liked that it was interdisciplinary in that it combined art and music. Though I think it seemed a little more skewed towards the music side than the visual arts, so I wasn't sure how within the scope of the grant it was. So let's see, the aim of the project and the requested time frame for the materials didn't completely match up. So the end date for the grant is a year. The album cover is supposed to be done in 4 to 5 months. And then there's a request for 2 years worth of Photoshop access. So I just wasn't sure exactly what the time beyond the 4 to 5 months would entail. She says she's further honing her skills on Photoshop, but then the 2 years of Photoshop access definitely seem beyond the scope of this grant. It's possible there's a clear explanation for what she wants to do, but I wasn't entirely sure how those numbers matched up. As far as community engagement goes, she suggests she's going to hone her skills on Photoshop and then use it to do others' artists' album covers. I think if she maybe also took those skills and perhaps offered like a workshop on how to do album cover art to local musicians, that might strengthen things a little bit more. It seemed like most of the benefit was to her and not the community. And I think there was a way to tweak this so that the two seemed a little bit more equal. And then I had some questions about the budgetary numbers. So the budget breakdown, it appeared that the materials for the actual artwork were only going to cost about $20. She's requesting $2,000 total. $1,500 was for the vinyl records. So I was wondering if that is for like the records themselves, if it's for printing the album cover, if it's for both. And then how does that tie back? So a case could certainly be made that the records themselves are important if it's tied back to the original illustration and the dissemination of that illustration. But I just didn't see a clear argument for why grant money should be used for that purpose, for producing her album, in other words, when it's about producing the album cover art. So I think some clarification on that would be good. So overall, I think it was a good proposal. There's just some clarity that I needed on some key points there.
Thank you for your comments, Natalie. Our second reader will be Andy.
Thanks, Ruth Ann. And thanks, Natalie. You hit on most of the points that I would have added. One thing that I thought was kind of striking is the artist portfolio was mostly painting and sketching, both styles of which were quite different. I had some trouble understanding why Photoshop was the program of choice for this artist rather than, I don't know, Adobe Illustrator or InDesign. And I also wondered a bit about how the artist was planning on learning Photoshop, which can be a complex and difficult program to get a handle on. There were some issues, I think, with the album release party, which was the bulk of the community engagement, which was to be achieved through social media campaign, which is great. But even just a comment about being put on community calendars would have been something that would have really supported, I think, this application as well. It's certainly a grant that would present growth and opportunity for this artist and their musical group. But as was suggested by Natalie earlier, I had some difficulty in understanding how this grant in particular was best aligned with the goals of this artist.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate your comments. Are there new or opposing comments?
Yes, I was not able to view the artist portfolio. Can someone tell me what I'm missing? How do I access the body of their work? I don't see, in the document viewer, I only see their resume listed twice.
Yep, I also see that. panelists speak up if you found something different, but I also was able to locate an additional YouTube link that was provided in artistic career status of what looks like a music video. Is that what you all are referring to?
In the side-by-side, there's two different files. One just says resume and the other says artist resume.
Okay.
And I think they are distinct.
So when I look at the artist resume, I see no photographs, only professional summary and personal skills. Am I missing? Yes, I am very much missing what yes. Okay, thank you. There's 11 pages there. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Additional comments.
Yes, I wanted to say it would make more sense if it was a series of paintings. Like, yes, I think that it could be a music release, but then make a more substantial visual art focus and say, okay, we're going to release this album, but it has a significant visual art component, like an exhibit of all the, let's say it has a booklet and those originals are exhibited. That could make more sense and make it a stronger proposal.
Thank you. Any other comments?
One thing I forgot to add in my comments was I wasn't quite sure if the artist yet had an idea of what the final product was meant to be and how that was going to emphasize the music or connect the two. There was a little bit of I think I just missed the definition there.
Thank you, Andy. Anyone else? I'm going to ask you to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
We're of course going to go over our scheduled time. Is there any panelists that cannot hang on the phone for the next 10 minutes, maybe until 11:40? Do you have a hard edge? Okay, thank you. I apologize for running over. We'll be succinct, everyone, with these next comments, but of course, please speak up and provide the comments you need to.
I'm moving ahead to our next applicant, who is Alex Warnick, and our first reader is Nazarene, please. Nazarene.
Hi, sorry, I was muted. The first thing that struck me about Alex Warnick's application was the strength of the portfolio in providing documentation for the quality of the artist's work. So, sorry, I've been confusing Alex Warnick and Shay Warnick. I think one strength that I originally thought might have been a weakness was in their budgeting. They talk about basically $1,000 is allocated towards binoculars. And originally when I read through it, I thought, well, that's really excessive. Does that really make an impact? But as I continued to read through it, I realized that they were choosing very carefully, oh dear, I've spoken English for 8 years and sometimes I lose English words. They were choosing equipment that was very appropriate for the project that they were proposing. They were not proposing the $3,000 binoculars that they mentioned that would have been for a different, more appropriate for a different project. So I originally thought that budgetary expense was excessive, but upon further reading of the application and hearing how they presented sort of the birding binocular equipment world, of which I'm not an expert in anyway, it seemed like they we're choosing this in a responsible way. Let's see. I thought that their community engagement area, I'm sorry, my computer is, okay. So the artist says, I hope to interact with Indiana residents who visit the locations where they'll be practicing. So although the sketching will be publicly observed and the invitation to observers will be there, I wanted a more formal, more set in stone way of extending the invitation to the workshops and to field sketching. So perhaps even having, like, in the budget, a second stool and a sketchbook that they could have next to them. So as people are walking by, they're not just calling out and starting discussions, but actually inviting them into the practice of creation. That's obviously just a suggestion, but somehow involving the public. It seemed like the artist was trying to involve the public in the actual creation process, and I wish they had solidified that a little bit more. The 2-hour workshop, I wanted to know how that workshop would be, how that workshop information would be advertised, and where that would be advertised, what targeted groups they were advertising to. I did find it significant that they are spreading out their project throughout Indiana, but their feasibility is still within good reach. They're being realistic about how to reach, what time frame they will need to reach all of those various Indiana locations. And I think that was all.
Thank you, Nazreen. I'm going to move on to our second reader, who's Julie.
Yes, I thought this was a pretty great application. And I think Nazreen brought up some really great points. The things that stood out to me was, well, I in terms of what could make the application a little bit better, I was interested in hearing a little bit more about the artistic aspect of this project. And maybe that's just my own ignorance of knowing anything about scientific illustration, but you know, it's interesting in what will this mean to people outside of the scientific community, and kind of a little bit more about the why of the creation of this work. You know, I mean, obviously for science purposes, creating these types of scientific illustrations they have their own uses, but what are the conceptual artistic uses, if you could call it a use, outside of the scientific community? That's just maybe something I was curious about. I thought it was great that she's connecting with so many different sort of little passionate pockets of people all around Indiana, and that she's found all these specific places to have workshops, planned exhibits at nature centers. I do think that this applicant should plan more to have more in-kind contributions for the exhibition side of this project. I don't have a problem with the high cost of the binoculars because of the importance of the visuality of what she's doing to her art, but you know, it's going to cost more than $18 to have for refreshments at her opening, and such, you know, other points. She's probably gonna have to end up spending a lot more on that than is budgeted in there. Other than that, I think that it's pretty well researched, pretty well explained, and I felt really good about this application.
Thank you very much, Julie, for your comments. I'll open it up for new or opposing comments.
I thought the public engagement section of this application was a particular highlight, especially the partnership the proposed partnership and the groundwork that was laid with the local Audubon Society chapters.
Thank you, Andy. Additional comments? I'll ask you now to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. I'm going to move ahead to our next applicant, who is Shay Warnick, and our first reader is Monica, please.
Yes, I thought this was a very, very strong application with an excellent portfolio. Well, she's been painting birds so far, and it sounds like she wants to expand that, and she wants to study and paint flowers in the Smoky Mountains. She gave some pretty good reasons to travel to the Smoky Mountains because of the variety of the flowers that she's going to be able to view there. The community engagement aspect of it was really good too, because she wants to teach botanical painting to school children at the Garfield Art Center, and it's going to be a free class. I don't really know what else to say. There's absolutely nothing negative about it. I thought this was one of the strongest applications that I viewed. The artwork is excellent, and she has her own vision for the ornithological illustrations that she does. So good outreach, good connection between the artwork and what she proposes to do.
Thank you, Monica. Our second reader is Esteban.
Thank you. I agree with Monica. This was a strong application, and good compelling narrative, demonstrates their commitment to their art practice. Their community engagement was really good, the way that they're engaging with Garfield Park. So I'm really repeating what Monica has said. Budget was very detailed, the timeline was very detailed, and it just demonstrates what they want, very tangible outcomes. So I really didn't have any problem with this application.
Thank you, Esteban. Are there any new or opposing comments? None being noted, I'm asking you to finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. This will conclude the Individual Advancement Program for the year 2021 Advisory Review Panel. The public meeting has now ended, and we'll say goodbye to the meeting guests at this time. This meeting recording will be posted on the program webpage in the coming weeks. Panelists, I need for you to please stay on the line. Thank you.